Hello. We are Darren and Robyn Chester. Lauren had asked us to talk a little bit about what it means to have peace. So how would you define that? What would you say comes to mind when people think of peace?
Well, peace often, there's a lot of different contexts in which to think of peace. Politically or among nations, peace is an absence of war, a state of cooperation between a couple of nations. One way we might think of peace, too, is an absence of enmity between us and God. The Scripture talks about how we are at enmity with God. We're in a state of conflict with God because of sin. And so being in a state of peace means that's taken care of through the Prince of Peace, Jesus, who came to bring union with those who were at war with God and God himself. So I think the first step towards knowing God's peace is to know God and being at peace with God.
True. So, but peace, the Bible talks about peace that passes understanding, and so it acknowledges that we will have trouble and that we will have anxious times, and we will feel anxiety, and we will feel fear, and we will feel I think mostly those kind of feelings come when we feel like we are not in control, which is so much of life. And but we're just feeling it amplified right now, is that we are under a situation that none of us has control over.
Mm-hmm.
So
one of the things I've noticed about Scripture is it never commands you to have a specific emotion. So if you think of peace as being in a certain state of an emotional state, I think that's probably the wrong way to think about it. Being at peace or having peace may mean the absence of certain emotions, but peace itself is not something, the feeling of peace itself is not something we can be commanded, because we don't really have any control over our emotions. It's like the Scriptures command us to do certain things with the promise that and the expectation that certain emotions will follow. Like this verse you have here from 1 Peter.
Okay. So 1 Peter 5:7 says, casting all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. And I think when we are feeling those anxious feelings, it's not that we have the feeling that is a problem. It's what we do with it when it comes. We had a situation last week where we got a phone call in the middle of the night. Darren's dad had a heart attack, and that it was a shocking thing. He's always been in good health, and we're so far away, and those feelings of anxiety can consume you. But we prayed and we read the Bible, and those are things that are great comfort in times like that, where it's not that we weren't feeling anxious or worried. It's what we did with that and where we went, who we went to in that moment, in that time.
Yeah, so that kind of makes me think of one way you could think of peace as having a box to put your worry into. So when I recognize I am worrying, when I have this feeling, the Scripture says, cast all your anxieties on him. It's like going and taking this worry and putting it into that box through prayer. That having that box is like having peace, knowing that I can go to that box and put those things which cause anxiety into it. And then when I've done that, and later on, even if it's 30 seconds or a minute later, I realize I'm anxious again, I go back to the box. And I do that as often as I need to put that in there. It's like a bottomless box of God's peace in which I can throw all my anxiety.
Right. And I think just like with anything else, the more, in the beginning, it may take a lot of conscious effort. But the further away you get from a situation where you're feeling anxious, the easier it is for you to walk without that anxiety. Whereas in the beginning, you may have to go stop and pray every hour, or then it becomes once a day. Then things build on it, because just like anything else, it's not really a habit that you're building, but it's a muscle that you're working out. And it becomes easier and easier to where God is the first thing that you go to, instead of thinking all I can do now is pray. That's the first thing you do instead.
All right, so I think they know everything they need to about peace now.
Yeah, so your lives should be wonderful. And just keep in mind that we are promised that there will be trouble in this world, but we are also promised that we are not alone, and God is always with us, and we can depend on Him.